Picture this: a cozy, elegant dinner setting at a favorite restaurant, soft lighting, gentle music, and the tantalizing aroma of a freshly cooked meal. A couple sits at the table, their relationship fractured beneath the surface. It's not an ordinary evening. It's the night when one of them makes an unforgettable move. That someone is me. Hello, dear listeners. Welcome back to another captivating story of life's unexpected twists. Today, I'll share a tale that will leave you reflecting on trust, resilience, and the courage to reclaim your dignity when life throws its challenges your way. It's the story of how I sent a divorce letter to my wife, placed it directly on the table while sharing dinner, with her lover sitting right across from me. What led to such a moment? Why choose this seemingly bold yet composed confrontation? Let me take you back to where it all began, because every story has a tipping point, and this one is no exception. It started innocently enough, little changes that I brushed aside. A shift in her routine, guarded phone conversations, and the emotional distance that slowly crept between us like an unseen wall. At first, I blamed myself. Perhaps I had become too busy, too complacent. These thoughts kept me awake at night, turning over every possibility in my mind. But when the gut speaks, it's hard to ignore. And so, I followed my instincts and sought clarity, not out of anger, but because I valued the truth. As I gathered the pieces, the picture became clearer, though not one I had ever wanted to see. Now, before we proceed, let me pause and share a crucial point. Research from the National Marriage Project suggests that trust and communication are the cornerstones of a strong relationship. When these begin to falter, it's essential to address them with honesty and mutual respect. Unfortunately, in my case, the trust had already been shattered. The day I found out the truth was strangely calm. There were no dramatic confrontations, no shouting matches. It was as though my mind had prepared me for this moment, even if my heart hadn't. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. I had finished work early and decided to surprise her at the cafe she often mentioned visiting for me time. As I walked in, I spotted her in a corner booth, laughing in a way I hadn't seen in years. Sitting across from her was someone I didn't recognize, a man who clearly wasn't just a friend. I didn't approach them. Instead, I quietly observed, letting the reality sink in. The way she leaned in, the way their eyes locked, it was a language of intimacy I had once shared with her. My initial reaction wasn't anger. It was sadness. Sadness for what we had lost and for the version of us that no longer existed. I left the cafe without being seen, but I knew that ignoring the situation wasn't an option. That evening, as I sat alone in our home, I thought about my next steps. Confrontation felt futile. Trust was already broken. Rebuilding it would require two willing hearts, and from what I had seen, hers was elsewhere. This brings me to an important reflection. Studies show that emotional infidelity can often feel more painful than physical betrayal. It's the breaking of a bond that once seemed unshakable, and for many, it's a wake-up call to reevaluate not just the relationship, but also one's own self-worth. I knew I deserved better. I deserved honesty, loyalty, and love that didn't have to be questioned. And so I made a decision, a calm, deliberate one. It was time to let go, but I wanted to do it in a way that would allow me to walk away with my dignity intact. That's when the idea struck me. The divorce letter wasn't an act of revenge. It was a statement of self-respect. If she had chosen her path, I would choose mine too, but with grace and clarity. The next step was planning how to deliver the message. I wanted to ensure it was impactful yet respectful. This wasn't about creating a scene or causing embarrassment. It was about drawing a line in the sand, reclaiming my sense of self, and showing her, and myself, that I wouldn't tolerate disrespect. I spent the following days writing the letter. It wasn't a long or dramatic piece, but every word was chosen with care. I expressed my hurt, but also my understanding. I acknowledged the love we had shared in the past, while making it clear that I could no longer be part of a relationship built on deception. Here's a short excerpt from what I wrote. I never imagined our journey would end like this. I truly hoped we could grow old together, weathering life's storms side by side. But trust is the foundation of any relationship, and once broken, It's nearly impossible to rebuild. I'm choosing to walk away not out of anger, but out of self-respect. I wish you the best in the path you've chosen, and I'll find mine with peace in my heart. After sealing the letter in an envelope, I made one final decision. I wanted to hand it to her in a setting where she couldn't dismiss or avoid the conversation. The opportunity presented itself sooner than I expected. A few days later, she suggested dinner at a restaurant we used to frequent. She looked genuinely happy, almost as if nothing had happened. I agreed, knowing this was my moment to act. When we arrived, she seemed surprised but pleased to see that I was calm and composed. She even mentioned how nice it was to spend time together again. I played along, keeping my emotions in check. But as the evening progressed, I noticed her growing distracted, glancing toward the door repeatedly. And then he walked in. The silence at the table was palpable. She stared at the envelope as if it held the weight of the world. Perhaps, in her mind, it did. Her companion shifted uncomfortably in his chair, clearly sensing the tension but unsure of his role in the unfolding drama. I leaned back, my posture relaxed, and gestured toward the envelope. "Go ahead," I said calmly. "Open it." Her hands trembled slightly as she picked it up, her eyes darting between me and him, perhaps hoping for an explanation or reassurance. But there was none. She slid her finger under the seal and unfolded the letter inside. As she read, her expression shifted through a range of emotions: shock, guilt, and finally, a forced composure as though she was trying to mask the storm brewing within her. Her companion, unable to take the suspense any longer, finally spoke up. Is everything okay?" I turned to him with a small, polite smile. "Oh, everything's just fine. I was simply letting my wife know that our chapter together has come to an end. You see, honesty is important to me, and I believe it's time for everyone here to be honest about what they want." He looked utterly baffled, while she struggled to find words. "I can explain," she stammered, but I held up a hand to stop her. "There's no need," I said gently. "The letter says it all. I wish you both well, truly. But I won't be a part of this triangle anymore. Life is too short for anything less than mutual respect and love." The restaurant seemed to fade into the background as I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and took one last look at her. I wasn't angry, just resolute. This brings us to an important takeaway. Sometimes, the most dignified response to betrayal isn't revenge or confrontation. It's choosing to step away with your head held high. In fact, experts often say that the best way to handle such situations is to prioritize your peace and self-respect over the need to explain or justify your feelings. With that in mind, I left the table, walking away from the pain and deceit and toward a future that was entirely my own. As I walked out of the restaurant that night, I felt an odd mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and an unexpected sense of empowerment. For years, I had been part of a partnership that I believed was built on trust and commitment. Letting go of that illusion wasn't easy, but in that moment, I knew I had done the right thing. When I got home, the quietness of the house felt different, less lonely, more peaceful. I sat down with a cup of tea and allowed myself to process everything. The memories, the pain, and even the good times we had shared all came rushing back. It's natural to feel conflicted after such a major decision, but I reminded myself that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning and moving forward. This is where many people falter after betrayal. They dwell on the why and how instead of focusing on the what's next. But here's what I learned. You can't control someone else's actions, but you can control your response to them. Experts in psychology often talk about the concept of radical acceptance. It's the idea that accepting the reality of a situation, no matter how painful, can free you from the emotional burden of resisting it. That's exactly what I chose to do. Instead of being consumed by anger or regret, I accepted the truth for what it was and decided to channel my energy into rebuilding my life. The first step was finding support. I reached out to a close friend, someone I trusted completely, and shared what had happened. Their words were a balm to my wounded heart. "You've shown more strength than most people could muster. This isn't the end for you. It's a new beginning." Those words stuck with me. They reminded me that every ending is an opportunity to start over, to redefine who you are and what you want out of life. That night, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't let this experience define me in a negative way. Instead, I would use it as a stepping stone to become stronger, wiser, and more attuned to the kind of life I truly deserved. The days that followed were a journey of self-discovery. I started focusing on things I had neglected during the marriage, not out of resentment, but to rebuild myself. It began with small steps, like reorganizing the house and removing items that carried emotional weight. Letting go of these physical reminders was cathartic, as though I was making space for a fresh chapter. I also revisited hobbies I'd abandoned over the years. There's a strange power in reclaiming parts of yourself that you thought were lost. For me, it was woodworking. The rhythmic sanding of wood and the satisfaction of creating something with my hands became a source of peace and focus. One of the most impactful decisions I made was to speak with a therapist. At first, I hesitated. There's a certain stigma, especially among older generations, about seeking professional help for emotional challenges. But the sessions turned out to be a lifeline. My therapist helped me unpack the feelings of betrayal, anger, and sadness while guiding me toward acceptance and healing. One thing they said struck a chord: forgiveness isn't for the person who hurt you, it's for you. Holding on to anger only ties you to the pain. It wasn't easy, but I realized forgiveness didn't mean excusing her actions. It meant releasing the hold they had on me. By forgiving her, I was freeing myself. I also started reading about resilience and self-growth. Did you know studies show that people who view challenges as opportunities for growth tend to emerge from them stronger? This concept, called post-traumatic growth, became my mantra. Instead of seeing myself as a victim of circumstances, I chose to see this as a chance to rediscover and redefine my life. Slowly but surely, the dark cloud began to lift. I found joy in the little things again, taking long walks in the park, reconnecting with old friends, and even trying my hand at cooking new dishes. Each of these moments reminded me that life is full of beauty, even after heartbreak. Months passed, and life began to take on a new rhythm. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, unfiltered and honest. The pain of betrayal had softened into a distant memory, replaced by a quiet strength I never knew I had. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I reflected on the journey I'd been through. It wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of a deeper relationship with myself. I learned to set boundaries, not just with others but with my own thoughts. Whenever self-doubt or bitterness crept in, I reminded myself of how far I'd come. Betrayal may have broken my trust in someone else, but it also taught me to trust myself, to listen to my instincts and value my own worth. Interestingly, I also found a sense of gratitude. Not for the betrayal itself, but for what it revealed. It showed me the importance of authenticity in relationships, the value of self-respect, and the power of letting go. As I wrap up this story, I want to leave you with a thought. Life doesn't always go as planned, but that doesn't mean it's over. Sometimes, the most painful chapters lead to the most profound growth. It's up to us to decide whether we'll stay stuck in the past or embrace the future with hope and courage. If you've faced betrayal or heartbreak, remember this: you are not defined by someone else's actions. You have the strength to rise above, to heal, and to create a life filled with peace and purpose. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If my story resonated with you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time.